The 7 Little Goats Never Opened the Door Again. Creepy bedtime tale. The night was falling fast over the quiet village, tucked deep in the forest. Smoke curled gently from chimneys, the last glow of sunset bleeding away into the dark canopy of trees. Inside a small, crooked wooden house at the forest's edge, 7 little goats huddled close to the hearth. Their mother, a weary but loving figure with kind, watchful eyes, tightened her shawl as she prepared to leave. "Remember," she whispered, her voice trembling with both care and warning. "Do not open the door for anyone, not even if they sound kind, especially if they sound kind." The little goats nodded, their wide eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. They had heard stories, every child in the village had, tales of a hungry wolf who roamed at dusk, his voice as smooth as honey but his teeth sharp enough to crack bone. Their mother kissed each of them on the forehead before stepping into the night, her lantern glowing dimly as she disappeared down the path. The house grew silent except for the crackle of wood in the fire. The goats whispered to one another, their tiny voices filled with nervous laughter, each trying to be braver than the next. Yet beneath their chatter, a sense of unease lingered like the chill creeping in through the cracks in the door. Then, just as the first stars pricked through the sky, came the sound. A knock. Slow, deliberate, and far too heavy for a neighbor's hand. The goats froze, their breaths hitched in unison. The eldest, small but determined, crept closer to the door. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice a thin thread of courage. From the other side came a voice, sweet, lilting, almost like their mother's. "Children, it's me. I've returned early. Open the door." The little goats exchanged nervous glances. Something about the voice was wrong. It was soft, yes, but behind the sweetness was a rasp, a hunger that scratched at the edges of every syllable. The eldest goat shook her head firmly. "No, you are not our mother." For a long moment, silence pressed against the house. Then, from the other side, came the sound of claws dragging slowly down the wood. The voice, now deeper, growled softly, "You are clever, but cleverness won't save you when hunger comes." The fire dimmed as if the very shadows grew bolder. The goats huddled together, hearts thundering. Outside, something circled the house, footsteps crunching in the dirt, slow and patient. The night had only just begun, and the wolf was waiting. The goats clung together, their tiny bodies trembling in the fire's dim glow. Outside, the sound of heavy steps circled the house like a predator tracing its prey. The eldest goat pressed her ear against the door, hearing not only the scrape of claws but also the wet huff of breath. Slow, calculated, savoring their fear. Then the voice returned, this time softer, more careful. "My little ones, do not be afraid. Look through the window. You will see your mother's shawl. I only wish to come in and hold you." The eldest goat tiptoed toward the window, her hooves clicking softly against the wooden floor. She dared to peek through the gap in the curtain. A figure stood there in the dim light of the moon, draped in something that looked like their mother's shawl. But the shape beneath it was too tall, too broad, the shadows too thick around its face. And when the figure tilted its head up, a gleam of yellow eyes shone from beneath the hood. The little goat gasped and stumbled back, her heart racing. "It's not her," she whispered fiercely. "Don't be fooled." The voice outside deepened, a low chuckle vibrating through the wood of the house. "So wise, but how long will wisdom keep your bellies full? How long before loneliness gnaws at you like hunger?" Suddenly, there was a thud against the wall, then another. The house shook as though something massive pressed its weight against it. The smaller goats cried out, clutching one another as cups rattled and the fire hissed in its hearth. The eldest goat tried to steady her siblings. "He cannot come in if we do not open the door," she insisted, though even she wasn't sure. Her voice was thin with doubt. The wolf's tone shifted again, mockingly playful. 7 little goats in a wooden house, 7 sweet morsels waiting for me. Do you know what fear tastes like? It is sweeter than sugar. Outside, the shawl slipped, revealing claws catching the moonlight and teeth glistening like knives. The wolf's hunger was no longer disguised. He pressed his snout to the window, fogging the glass with his breath. His grin stretched too wide, as if eager to swallow them all in one bite. The goats backed away, every instinct screaming to flee, though there was nowhere to run. The night outside was endless, and the thing that waited was patient. At last, the wolf whispered, almost tenderly, "You will open the door. Maybe not tonight, but soon. And when you do, you will never close it again." The wind howled through the trees, as if carrying his promise deeper into the night. The goats sat frozen, their fire nearly extinguished, the shadows growing longer. And for the first time, they wondered if their mother would ever return. The night dragged on like a cruel game, each hour heavier than the last. The fire in the hearth had dwindled to embers, leaving the cottage in shadows. The youngest goat whimpered softly, asking again and again, "When will Mama come home?" The eldest pressed her lips together, refusing to answer. She didn't know, and outside the wolf knew too. For a while there was silence, an unsettling, calculated quiet. It was worse than the pounding on the walls, worse than his snarls. The goats huddled in their blankets, praying the silence meant he was gone. Then a sound drifted through the door. Knock, knock, gentle, almost polite, followed by a sigh. "My children, I was delayed. Please forgive me. Your mother has returned." The goats froze, every ear twitching. The voice was perfect. Every note, every cadence, the softness of their mother's tone. Even the way she would pause before calling them children. The youngest goats bolted upright, tears of relief shining in their eyes. "It's her. It's really her." But the eldest goat felt the hair rise along her spine. Something was wrong. She leaned closer, whispering fiercely, "Do not be fooled. Listen carefully." They pressed their ears to the door together. At first, it was flawless, the warmth of their mother's voice, the rhythm of her speech. But then came a sound that did not belong, a low rumble, like a growl hidden beneath the words. The eldest goat's breath caught. It wasn't her mother, it was him. He had learned their mother's voice. She turned to her siblings, her eyes wide with terror. "It's still the wolf. He's playing with us." From outside, the voice hardened, the disguise dropping like a mask. So clever, so defiant. But even clever little goats grow tired. Even brave ones make mistakes. The wolf scraped his claws down the wooden door, leaving long, splintering marks. The sound shrieked through the cottage, making the little goats cover their ears. "I will wait," he crooned. "I can wait forever. But you, little ones, you must sleep eventually. And when your eyes close, when your dreams soften your guard, the door will open." The fire's last ember winked out. Darkness swallowed the room. The goats clung to one another in silence, too afraid to move, too afraid to breathe. And outside, the wolf crouched in the shadows, his glowing eyes fixed on the door. Patient, hungry, certain. He would not leave until they slipped. Hours bled together inside the cottage. The goats hadn't slept. Their eyes were raw and swollen, their bodies trembling with fatigue. The youngest whimpered constantly, his cries muffled by the eldest's trembling hand. But children cannot fight exhaustion forever. One by one, their eyelids sagged. The eldest goat shook them awake, whispering furiously, "Don't listen to him. Don't dream. He's waiting for that." Yet outside, the wolf was whispering too. Soft, coaxing words slipped through the cracks in the door, carried on a voice that was no longer imitating their mother, but something more sinister. A voice that seemed to drip inside their heads, curling into their thoughts. "You're hungry, aren't you? Your mother will not come back. But I can feed you. I can give you warm milk, sweet grass, everything you crave. The middle goat, weak with hunger, started to crawl toward the door. His eyes looked glassy, as if he wasn't in control. The eldest grabbed him and pulled him back, but his small hooves clawed at the floor, desperate to reach the whispers. "Stop it!" the eldest screamed, shaking him. "It's not real." The wolf chuckled, the sound vibrating through the walls like thunder. The wood creaked under the weight of his claws, and for a terrifying moment, the eldest thought he would break through, but he didn't. Instead, the wolf pressed his snout to the cracks in the door, and his breath poured in like cold mist. It spread across the floor, tendrils of fog snaking toward the children. The youngest goat cried out, swatting at the mist as if it were alive. And in a way it was. The fog curled around their legs, their throats, chilling them to the bone. The eldest goat dragged her siblings away from the door, into the corner by the hearth. But no matter where they moved, the fog followed. Then came the sound, gentle, deliberate. Crack! A tiny piece of wood snapped loose from the door. The goats froze. Another crack followed, louder, sharper, until the door itself groaned. The wolf wasn't trying to burst in with brute force anymore. He was peeling the cottage open, bit by bit, patient as death itself. The eldest clutched her siblings close, her own heart hammering with terror. She whispered to herself as much as to them, "We just have to survive until morning. Mama will come back. She has to." But the wolf only laughed, a sound that echoed deep and endless. "Little goat, morning will never come." The cracks widened, the darkness deepened, and for the first time, the eldest goat feared he was right. The cottage had become a coffin of shadows. The fire had long since burned out, and the only light came from the thin cracks in the door, glowing faintly with the moon. Through those cracks, the wolf's eye gleamed, unblinking, watching. The eldest goat clutched her siblings tighter. Her arms ached. Her throat burned from whispering reassurances she no longer believed. Her mother had not returned. Morning felt like a lie. The wolf's voice drifted in again, lower now, almost tender. "Why do you fight so hard, little one? They're just children. Children must sleep. Children must dream. Let them come to me, and you may rest." The eldest shut her eyes, pressing her forehead against the wood of the hearth. Her siblings stirred beside her, their breathing shallow. One of them began to hum softly, almost like a lullaby. The sound made her stomach twist. The wolf scratched again at the door, this time not to break through, but to carve something. A symbol, jagged and looping, began to etch itself into the wood. The grooves glowed faintly as if lit from within. The mist returned, curling stronger, filling the room like water filling a sinking ship. The goats coughed, choking on the cold. Their small hooves clutched the floor. The eldest pulled them close, whispering desperately, "Don't open your eyes. Don't listen. Don't let him in." But it was too late. The mist thickened until the room itself seemed to dissolve. The walls no longer felt solid. The floorboards rippled like water. The goats were no longer in their home. They were floating in a vast, endless blackness where the wolf's laughter echoed from every direction. The eldest goat tried to scream, but no sound left her mouth. She looked at her siblings, 6 pairs of wide, terrified eyes staring at her. Then, one by one, they began to vanish. Not with violence, not with blood. They simply flickered, their shapes dissolving into the mist as though they were never real at all. "Stop!" the eldest sobbed, reaching out, but her hooves grasped only empty air. At last, only she remained. The wolf's voice whispered right behind her ear, "Now, little goat, open the door." Her trembling hand lifted, not toward the cottage door. It was gone, but toward an unseen threshold in the void. She touched it, and the world shattered into silence. When the villagers came days later, the cottage stood exactly as it always had. The door was unbroken, the hearth untouched, the beds neatly made. But the 7 little goats were never seen again. And from that night forward, no door in the village was ever left unguarded, because everyone knew the wolf was still waiting.